yo, I'll tell you what I want, what I really, really want. So tell me what you want, what you really, really want. Yeah, that's how we started our negotiation session today, except it was a lot more boring than that. Okay, so we had a team of India and a team of Japan negotiate how they would collaborate, bringing tractors or excavators or something, some machine, into India's new market, emerging market. Okay, so me and two other guys from our cluster, we were supposed to represent Team India, and we had three other of our classmates represent Team Japan, and we went at it today. We prepared yesterday about our talking points. We subscribed points, I guess values to everything we wanted in each segment, totaling up to 125. And they had the same thing, totaling up to 125, except we didn't know what they wanted in their talking points, right? However, we learned from everything that our professor taught us about decision making and persuading others, and we use anchoring skills, getting small confirmations, these tiny things to get our opponents, I shouldn't say opponents, our collaborators to work with us in our negotiation. So we took lunchtime right after class to go into a small room in the library. Oh, so brightly lit actually, now that I think about it. I think the sunlight probably made us more awake, and that definitely helped us. Yeah, now that I think about it, that's what happened. Anyways, we went into this with an attack plan. We laid out a few of our talking points, but the other team came right back at us with some really reasonable things that they were saying about whether to work with us or our competitors, or whether we should work with their competitors, stuff like that. We were taken aback because we originally approached this with an idea of distracting them with irrelevant stuff that wasn't even mentioned in the case study, and using that to get them to focus on the non-important things as we eventually negotiate to what we want. Okay, so they didn't bite. All right, we kind of moved on from the important things about like exclusivity and profit sharing margins onto more minor things like payment methods, what kind of currency we're going to pay with, whether we should mediate with Indian or Japanese arbitration or Canadian. Actually, in the end, we both decided that it would be best if we use Canadian dollars and Canadian arbitration to meet halfway as a neutral midpoint for both of our corporations. However, then came the most important part, for us at least. So we totally were driving this conversation because the premise was we were in Japan visiting our collaborators, trying to convince them to come to India and work with us in the future. Okay, so the burden was on us. I guess that makes sense. That's why we kind of hijack things a little bit. Although I would say if I were the host, I would be the one kind of laying out the agenda. Just maybe like giving everything all at once and then letting the team talk. But, well, that's the way I would have approached it, and it may not be the best way because clearly our opponents were quite aware of what they were doing, at least we thought. So our most important point was how long to sign our contract for. We tried to go for 10 years. However, we started our anchoring with 15, which was not even in consideration for them. So eventually we got them to meet halfway in between us, and we kind of made it seem like we weren't really taking much from them, and we weren't giving that much. So it came back to the original talking points, and through lots more negotiation, a few more minutes of this back and forth riffraff, we finally agreed that we would be willing to give up our exclusivity and only share 20% of our profit margins with them. That means we get 80%, they get 20%. So in the end, the points we were subscribed to out of 125, we got 99. So tomorrow we're going to see if the professor is going to say whether our team did the best or someone beat us. I would honestly be really surprised if someone beat us because our opponents, out of their 125 points, they only got like 40 something. When I learned in the end that's how little they got, I almost felt a little bad that we kind of were quarreling, well, not really quarreling, but like we just made such sound logical arguments that convinced them so much in the end to sway in our favor. I mean, they only got 49 points out of a possible 125. Think about that. That's like around 40%, while we got like 80% of our points. It's ridiculous. Anyways, having sound logical arguments is important in especially in the negotiation arena, but even in your daily life as you chit chat with your buddies. So today I went out with some friends after we had class, and we talked about something. Well, we kind of like led to this idea of blackface, and I brought it up actually because I was telling them about the Golden Globe Awards that I mentioned in a previous video, I think last week, where Jimmy Fallon was making fun of Chris Rock, right? Chris Rock, the ha ha ha, the really rowdy comedian. Jimmy Fallon was making fun of him, but I think in the YouTube video I was watching, I don't know whether it was during the Golden Globes award show or maybe it was added just on YouTube, there was a clip of Jimmy Fallon doing an earlier impersonation of Chris Rock, probably like 15 or 20 years ago, where he has makeup and makes him look really dark, right? So in America, we call this kind of dress blackface, and it refers to a historical minstrel show where during the Jim Crow period of America, where although black people were no longer enslaved, they were freed, they were still treated very unfairly in much of the country. And during this era, this time period, white actors put on really dark makeup, almost as if it was like charcoal or something, to rub on their faces, and it made them look, in an exaggerated way, very obnoxiously dark-skinned. Although Jimmy Fallon wasn't really made up in the same way, it reminded me of a fraternity that I was kind of knew about when I was in college in Los Angeles a few years ago. I think it was about 4 years ago. This other fraternity from another school, I'm not going to say which, but if you know, you can go look it up. They came out with a music video of Jay-Z and Justin Timberlake's Suit and Tie. Okay, so a few of their brothers were singing, dancing, prancing around in their suits and ties, and of course, midway through the song, where Jay-Z's rapping part comes in, you see this person in your minstrel style, 1920s or Jim Crow era, blackface. It was very shocking, and it ended up on the front page of Yahoo News. I think it was like the next day, right? So this was a huge, made a huge splash in our Asian American Greek community that I was part of when I was in SoCal. And it was, we didn't really know what was going to happen. Of course, some of us who, especially those of us who grew up in America, in liberal America of California, we knew how offensive this would be to bring up the racist past of almost a century ago. Even though it might have different historical context today, it doesn't mean that it's no longer offensive. This fraternity, they didn't end up faring very well. I believe they got suspended from their university, and it was a terrible publicity stunt in every way possible. However, Jimmy Fallon didn't do it in the minstrel style makeup. He just did it. He just applied darker skin makeup on himself to, I guess, in a way, resemble Chris Rock. I think he even had the curly hair going. Here's the thing, though. If Jimmy Fallon is impersonating a black comedian, what is a politically correct way for him to go about it? Is there a politically correct way for a white comedian to be making fun of a black comedian through impersonation? And this is what me and my two friends were talking about. One of them was saying, yeah, it's just entirely unfair. Like, you're totally misguided in your way of treating the different races. Another one was saying, yeah, but you got to reconsider the historical ramifications of the significance, the impact it has on all the people. And I was saying, I remember when I was watching the video during the Golden Globe Awards, the people in the audience, like Denzel Washington, famous black actor, not pleased. No, Jimmy. So you're getting these kind of reactions, but people who usually would be laughing their butts off seeing Chris Rock impersonate Jimmy Fallon, and I bet he'd do a really great job because Jimmy Fallon is really easy to impersonate. I can just do this because every skit he's in, he can't hold back his laugh. He just can't keep character. He's terrible at that. You got to think about how these people react. Okay, so there was some back and forth discussion, and I think in the end, when I jumped in, I kind of realized, to summarize, I guess, all of our talking points, it's a misguided notion to be super careful, to walk on eggshells when you're making satire comedy about one race when you're from another, just because you're the majority and you're making fun of the minority. These are two individual comedians, both extremely successful, both extremely popular, I guess even in a way role models to much of America's TV viewing population. But when you're saying one way, making fun of the majority is okay, yet the other way, making fun of the minority is not okay, what are you really saying? Well, you're saying that the majority has an advantage in other situations, and you are giving the minority an advantage in this case. Okay, that's true. But what does it say overall with how we see race, how we expect people to treat each other? Is it really sending the correct message, the most fair message to people when we can't make fun of each other in a equal and balanced way? And when you can't do this, is there going to be injustice that results in the reverse way? How do you know where to take it before it gets out of hand? You could just imagine, especially with the recent Chicago abduction of a mentally disabled white man, and they kidnapped him to torture him for like I think 2 days in an abandoned house, grazing his scalp to the point where you can see his bone, the skull bone, the whole time saying, "F you, white man, F you, Trump voter," right? Fortunately, they were charged with a with a hate crime, so that's good. At least America's legal system has its priorities in order. I feel like I can't help but feel some of these actions were spurred on because some extremists in the minority portion of the population are seeing this one way in unequal distribution, I guess, and they're taking it to the extreme measures of taking it way too far, just not stopping until they get revenge on the majority or something. And that's really alarming. Okay, so if you guys remember, back when I was watching that Golden Globe skit with Jimmy Fallon's failed comedy, I was actually looking for the speech of President Obama's farewell address. So today is America's final day under Barack Obama's presidency. I'm a fan of the guy. I think he's cool, right? If I could meet any president in the last century, it most likely would be him, or maybe FDR, right? It'd be one of those. I'm a big fan of both of them. But I just like him as a person. I don't necessarily agree with his policies. I don't agree with how many people he's killed around the world. I don't agree with the secrecy he's been implementing by driving Edward Snowden out of the country into Russia. I mean, in the past few days, he did pardon Snowden's partner in crime, who actually did a lot worse things. So it's like some of his judgment I don't quite understand, but as a person with that much charisma and character, I love him. I would aspire to be him if I could ever be president. But in his farewell address, and because I didn't get to watch it, I asked my friends tonight what was addressed in that address. And they told me that Barack told people in his farewell speech, although we have come a long way since 40 years ago when there was extreme division, I would even say somewhat apartheid in America. Those are a little extreme, of course. Since then, it's become a lot better. He did address that. However, he made a much longer tirade about how we have so far to go in uniting the races together. I don't know exactly the way he talked about it because I didn't get to watch it yet. But I would hope, as huge fan of Mr. Obama, that he approached it as we need to come about the the initiative of coming together. We need to approach this initiative of coming together on an individual basis, not as a collective identity basis. It shouldn't be, yeah, all black people of America and all white people of America. You guys should just make up. Stop fighting. Stop shooting unarmed black men, cops. That's such a generalist, stereotypical way of approaching things. And me and my one friend, we said this just exacerbates things, makes them so much worse. The intention is great. I get it, Mr. Obama. I think we all want this, at least most of us in America, we all want the same intentions of improving equality amongst the different socioeconomic and racial backgrounds of all the 350 million people we have living in this country. Who doesn't want that? In the right mind. I'm not saying like, I'm not appealing to the racists here, okay? But we're all fighting for this thing. However, the approach you're taking towards it is not exactly best. Why not tell every person out there, like Kennedy did, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country. He approached every single citizen in America as an individual. And I hope Barack did the same. Okay, because I really admire that guy. Anyways, Obama has always been compared as a great orator full of charisma to the great JFK, another admired president of mine. So I'm hoping he leaves a lasting legacy. Even as we see a new man come into office, sometime during the day tomorrow. So it'll be interesting to watch for sure. I'm not exactly skeptical. Well, I'm always a little bit skeptical of presidents, but I'm not going to be a hindrance to what President Trump is going to be. I'm not going to try to be an obstacle to what he's doing. Because in another great quote, our president succeeds means our country succeeds, and that means we all succeed. I hope that's the outlook you also have as you welcome in our new president, number 45.